Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to episode 96 of Trail Society. We're almost to 100. Produced by Free Trail, brought to you by Rabbit. I'm Corrine Malcolm.
I'm Keely Henninger.
And I'm Hillary Allen.
And happy Women's History Month. I probably should have started episode 95 with that as well. These are our two March episodes. It was International Women's Day on March 8th. This will come out on like the 25th. So hopefully you all had a great time on International Women's Day. I was at a really cool group run that was collectively hosted by like four different run clubs, and we
Cool.
had over 100 women there. It was
Wow.
so sick. I'm wondering if you guys did anything special or meaningful to you for International Women's Day.
I, I guess it's close to it. I ran a trail marathon with a bunch of fast ladies. That was the best way I could figure out to celebrate.
You also were, it seems like you were a keynote speaker or gave some sort of
Yeah,
little talk at the, is it the Colorado Sportswomen's Hall of Fame?
yeah. So Sportswomen of Colorado, it was basically just like a weekend filled with amazing, strong women. So in Colorado, it's this is this nonprofit organization, and it's their 51st year, and they've been honoring women of Colorado, like from the high school level all the way up to the professional level, for 51 years.
Whoa.
There was like so many legends in that room, and then some amazing like up and comers, some Olympians, and yeah, it was super cool. So I got to be the keynote speaker for the night. So that was amazing. I think the only thing harder than running a trail marathon is standing in heels for 6 hours. So
Don't envy you.
oh,
Don't envy
it
you at
was
all.
really cool though. It was super cool. So
Nice.
yeah.
Keely, did you do anything fun for International Women's Day? Did you go run with your girls?
I don't even know what day of the week it is right now, so maybe. I just drank some Diet Coke. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, no, I probably did. I have a good squad right now. Some of them training for similar things as me, some of them not, but we're all on like a similar training trajectory, similar timeline, and similar work life schedule. So it's been so fun to just have like absolute crushers to run with pretty much
At
7 days a
5:30 in the
week
morning?
at
Like, have
very
you seen
early
your
times in the
workouts?
morning. Yeah, it's really fun.
Awesome.
I'm
Um,
a wreck with the spring forward. I can't like you running at 5:30 a.m. is absolutely crushing me.
Oh my
Tuesday was
gosh.
rough. Yeah.
Corinne, I ran with one of your athletes, Jeremy, on Sunday morning because this is before I basically had the marathon day with the speaking gig. And so I just realized like we were running at 6:30. We both realized we're like, it's actually 5:30. No wonder we feel so
And Jeremy's
tired.
not
I
a
know.
morning boy.
He
Mm.
rallied. It was awesome.
Yeah, I told him explicitly that he had to run with you at least twice this week. So hopefully you are making good
Okay, I'll
on
text
that
him.
demand. Perfect. Okay, well, we should shout out to our partner for the year, Rabbit. They just launched their new Sun and Ice collection. Keely, before we hit record, described their really sick UPF tee long sleeve. They have a hoodie. You described it as funfetti in a shirt. Tell us a little bit about the UPF shirt and how much you love it.
Yeah, it's so cool. It is super, super light. It has zipper pockets on it, so you can throw a key in this in the back of the shirt. And then yeah, it has a hood. It's a pink with like light purple, light blue speckles across it. It literally looks like funfetti in a shirt, and it's so cool. I got so many compliments. It's so light. I ran in it. I didn't need the sun protection per se because I'm already very pale living in Portland, but it was like a really cool shirt. I just wanted to wear it in general, and it was like 55 on Sunday, so I just wore that and some shorts, and it was so novel. But yeah, I loved it. It was so cool. It wicks super well. Wasn't annoying with the pack, so 10 out of 10 recommend. If you guys want to twin with me and the squad, we can all
Yeah,
wear the funfetti. It's so so cool.
It
twin
was
with
super
us.
comfy. I ran in
Yeah,
one too. Yeah.
it's cool because it's UPF 50. Like I struggle to get sunscreen on all of the appropriate parts of my body. I always miss a section. I burn like a tiny line along my arm or like by my watch. It's got extended sleeves and thumb holes and watch windows so you can like, keep your whole arm covered. Super light. It's got these really cool laser cut perforations on the underarm to increase with ventilation in the heat as well. I took it on a ski tour. It was perfect. I loved it. They also dropped a really cool ice hat. Saw a photo of Keely running in an ice hat. Probably didn't have ice cubes in it at that point in time, but it looks really nice.
It's so pretty. It's like a light mauve pink.
Mine's blue.
Speaking
We'll
my
have to match
language
at
right
Canyons.
now.
Yeah,
Mine's pink. I can be twinning with Keely.
Perfect.
I love that we got colors here and there. So yeah, if you would like to try out the UPFT or long sleeve, the ice hat, this will come out on March 25th, which means our March code, which is just Trail March, all one word, March like the month of March. Wow, Trail March. You're gonna go over, that's gonna get you 10% off at checkout. And again, that is good through the end of the month. We'll continue to update those codes as we roll along. So again, get your 10% off, get yourself a new sun hoodie. No skin cancer around here, okay?
Mm-mm.
None. None of y'all. No
Not
skin
when you can
cancer.
look that cool.
Yeah, you can be pretty and avoid
Yeah.
melanoma. So we're all about it.
And
Um,
tag us in your photos if you get some stuff and you want to twin us. Tag us in
yeah,
them.
let us know. Little outfit of the day maybe going on Instagram. I wanted to just like crush through a few results. We are recording this ahead of Chuckanut, Chianti, Big Alta, etc. So you guys are going to have to come back to episode 97 to recap all those fabulous races that are going on. Keely's going to be rocking it at Big Alta. Chuckanut's in my backyard. It's going to be super cool to see our really good friend Dylan Bowman run there. The fields are super good. And then Chianti for those two more golden tickets going down in the 120K over in Europe. Friend of the pod, Abby Hall, will be chasing a golden ticket there. Really excited to follow along for that. This past week, another friend of the pod, Hannah Allgood, rocked her first race in her new team kit in the Terex kit. She ran the Muck, the Marin Ultra Challenge 50K. She ran 350, setting a 50K PR and a course record there. So Hannah Allgood, the girls got wheels. That was kind of nasty
Where's
fast.
that race at?
It's all over the headlands, like
Okay,
mostly southern
cool.
headlands, but it goes
Nice.
all the way up Bolinas Ridge. The 50 mile does. I don't know. The 50K might not go out that far, but it is like Rodeo Valley Beach, kind of like all
Cool.
over
Nice.
that zone. It hits all the key zones.
Yeah.
It's
Fun.
basically the March version of the TNF
Nice. I was gonna
stuff.
say, sounds
Ah,
like
okay.
kind of a consolidated TNF.
Yeah,
Nice.
but
No
you don't have to
bridge
cross the
crossing,
bridge.
which is
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
it's a great spring race. If you're looking
Cool.
for a 50K or 50 mile, the Muck or the Marin Ultra Challenge 50K and 50 mile race weekend is always really nice, even though sometimes it's a little wet. So keep that one on your radar for next year. The Mesquite Canyon 50K also went down over the weekend, an Air Viper race in Arizona. Jim Walmsley is fit in all caps. He's racing the Chianti 120, even though he doesn't need a ticket. He set the course record. Eric LaPuma finished in second to him. And then our favorite fastest Canadian, Elsa McDonald, took the women's win. No surprise there. She ran like 440. And the course is not fast. Like the videos of Eric like running through the canyons, it's like literally rock hopping. Like he was like scrambling at one point. So there's obviously some fast trail, but there's obviously a lot of very not fast trail in it as well. And then Hilly showed up to the Run Through Time marathon in Salida, but she also showed up with Courtney DeWalter, who kicked off her 2025 season with a win there. Imogen Ainsworth, who is not named after Imogen Pass, because I think she's a Brit actually, was second. She's won this race before. And then Hilly Goat in third. A little vroom vroom, little trail marathon in your legs.
It was fun. It was so funny. I was exiting my van. It was like a little snowstorm at the beginning of the race. So the trails are coated in snow. And I was like getting out of my van and crossing the parking lot, and I like turned, and both Courtney and I like were like, "Oh, I didn't know you'd be here." It was so funny. We both signed up like on a Thursday, like on a whim or something like this. So it was
It
my
was her
first
shakeout
time.
run for Cocodona, you know?
Oh yeah, exactly. For her, for sure. She's saying she's like need to practice getting some gels, running fast, like run far, done by noon or before. But
Mm.
yeah, it was cool. And yeah, it's my first time racing altitude in a long time. I
Oh,
love
Yeah,
it.
fun.
it looked beautiful. It looked fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, how'd the ankle feel? The foot feel good?
Yeah, so that was actually the cool thing is that like I've been taking it pretty easy, like haven't been running as much and but I still felt like I had like a lot of fitness from Tarawera. So yeah, I think we were talking about this before we hit record, but like doing more intensity and like less volume, I think suits us well. Me well. It's been suiting me well, but like better than I have in the past to not feel as like run down all the time. So yeah, I think this might be like a trend moving forward,
I
and
like it.
it's nice to like run faster. And then the biggest thing was I had gone to the doctor and like kind of checked up on some things. Wasn't imagining things at Tarawera, so that's
That's
good, but
good.
it's also hard to see that on an X-ray machine. But yeah, I think shorter stuff is probably where I'm going to focus on for um, the rest of the season. And
We're
it's
gonna keep
nice that,
all your tendons and ligaments. We're gonna keep them happy.
yeah, and it's nice because then the next day you can really notice if you actually did too much or not, if things don't like swell up and don't feel bad. So, yay.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Jeshurun Small is like was also there, kicked off his
Yeah.
season, or he won the Black Canyon 50K. He then won the Run Through Time Marathon, besting John Ray for that win. John also recently won the Red Hots 55K, so both those guys off to speedy starts to their season. I think Jeshurun will be at the Canyons 50K in April. Excited to see him run there as well, but just like really like off to a fiery start in 2025. And we just started. The race isn't just started. So I'm just huh, like continually blown away. So congratulations to everyone that raced far, fast, however long it took you to get from point A to point B, all incredibly impressive. That was just a quick little highlight reel of some of the things that caught my eye over the weekend. I would like to call the first bit of this news section, people give money to women's sports. If that sounds okay. I don't know if you guys saw what I put in here, but
Mhm.
it was just like story after story after story coming through of interesting donations that are specifically earmarked for women's athletics and generally in specific ways and specific programs. The last one I found, which is the first one I'm gonna tell you about, I think is really, really cool. And it was Florida quarterback donates money from his NIL deal. And I was like, what is happening here? So the University of Florida quarterback, DJ Lagway, announced a significant donation from his name, image, and likeness earnings to support the Gators women's sports program. Partnering with Florida Victorious, the university's official NIL collective, Lagway's contribution, reported to be a six-figure sum, will support the volleyball, gymnastics, basketball, and softball teams, highlighting the growing trend of cross-gender support in collegiate athletics. And that one just like stood out to me in this really interesting way of a male player within this collegiate sports system where I think you're going to see a lot of NIL deals largely go to kind of like those big football players, the big basketball players, the periodic runner. But I wonder if those deals for running are oftentimes akin to the NFL versus professional track contracts. I wonder if those look a little bit different. And so a lot of NCAA programs are having trouble supporting programs that are not revenue generating.
Mhm.
And so track and field, generally not revenue generating. Women's softball, generally not revenue generating, like in comparison to football and basketball, for example. So I thought that was a really cool, like, just pitch of recognizing that this NIL money could go into
Mhm.
a really like a cool cause. I don't want to call female athletics a cause, like it shouldn't be. It's not a moment, it's a movement. It's not just, yeah. But I saw the story and I was like, ooh, I really, really like it.
Yeah, it's interesting how this has like shifted the whole balance of like funding and stuff at schools too, because I bet that like there's some shifting in where schools are prioritizing their money too, knowing that certain athletes and certain teams are getting like really big NIL deals. And I've heard like through the grapevine that certain sports are just getting kind of like cut from schools because they're just like, we don't want to support this anymore, and like you're not getting an NIL deal, therefore we
You're
don't
not
have any
revenue
money for
generating.
you, which is crazy, and that's pretty sad. It's almost like it's doing the opposite of what they wanted to do when they started it. So just
Yeah,
interesting.
it's further highlighting some of those sport discrepancies.
Hmm.
Um, Similarly but different, the University of Utah got a large donation for women's sports. It was reported the University of Utah received a $14 million estate gift from an anonymous donor to support women's athletics programs. This is the second major donation earmarked for Utah women's sports in recent years, joining a $6 million gift from the Harriet and Leo Hop family. The combined $20 million will launch the Crimson Club Legacy Society to honor those who contribute to Utah's athletic programs through charitable estate gifts. Really cool. A 14, it's not just the athletics department, it's specifically earmarked for women's athletics at the University of Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Again, really, really cool. Just like, remember how people are like, well, if people cared about women's sports, they would watch it. Well, they're watching it. Like they're showing up and they're showing up with their checkbooks and their wills and their assets and they're making it happen. So this is just like another feather in the hat for women's athletics.
Woohoo.
Okay. One last one in the family of people give money to women's sports, and then we'll talk a tiny bit of science, and then we're going to talk some safety, not etiquette, safety stuff for trail and road running. This one I was like, Keely, this is really
Yeah, it
cool.
is really cool.
Get it? Like you're like, ooh, how can I like tie into this somehow? So it was reported that Portland is getting a new women's sports center. So Raj Sports, the investment platform for the Bethel family, announced plans for a first of its kind dual sports women's performance center serving both the Portland Thorns football club and the new Portland WNBA franchise. The $75 million facility, part of a larger $150 million campus, will feature 63,000 square feet of training space, including a 17,000 square foot basketball practice gym, two full-size soccer pitches, elite training facilities, and specialized amenities designed specifically for female athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Like, oh my gosh, get me a job. I'm in. Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
How can I assist?
This sounds really cool. And it was an old Nike like office building complex. And so they're using like the workspace property trust to basically convert the commercial office environment into like a training facility. So it's like a good repurposing of space as well. And it's out in Hillsborough, so it's a little bit further than Portland. So it's like 20 to 30 minutes outside of Portland, but that's where we have a ton of space, so that kind of makes sense. But my big question is like, where are they going to go for their orthopedics? I don't know. We'll see.
It seems like Keely might need to have a long-term deal going on here. But you're right. No, like those partnerships will matter, right? Their physios, their athletic trainers, their medical staff. Those relationships will be continuing to grow given the investment in women's athletics in the air. I'm trying to book with this massage therapist here in Seattle, but she sort of treats the Reign, the women's soccer team, and I'm like,
Mm.
can I like fit into your schedule? You're like in my neighborhood. I know you're kind of a big deal, but like, can I get into? So we shall see. But yeah, hot commodities all around. The last piece of news is some fun science came through my inbox, and it said
Mhm.
science looks at the 4-minute mile barrier in female athletes. And I was like, interesting. Okay. And it's really set up around drafting. But then I looked at the paper and I was like, oh my God, it's written by some of our favorite people.
Mhm. I
Keely,
know,
were there any
yeah.
names that stood out to you when
I
you
mean,
looked at the paper?
second author Shalea Kip, then Walter and Roger are both on it, who were big, big players in like the 4% shoe. Roger Crom is like the goat of biomechanics. So lots of names on the paper. I unfortunately didn't recognize the first name, but I'm sure they're also a bit amazing in this space. I just haven't upkept myself on that research in a while.
Yeah. But Shalea, like a podcast
Oh yeah.
alumni of
Yeah.
ours,
We'll link
was
her old show in the show notes.
Nice.
yeah. So the very opening of the research says, um, Diane Leather ran a mile in 4:59.6, becoming the first female athlete to run under 5 minutes. Over the ensuing 7 decades, the female mile record continued to progress, and in 2023, Faith Kipyegon ran a 4:07.64. That's 70 years. So we took 50 seconds plus 50 plus seconds off of the women's time. There are high schoolers running well under 4:59 at this
Mm.
point. It's kind of disgusting. People are really, really fast these days. Qualifying for NCAAs, you got to run really, really fast. But I thought it was super interesting when we looked at like basically this is a math problem. The paper is a math problem. And I thought it was like super interesting. No, so Keely, that 3.9% is not, I mean, the men's world record is probably greater than
Right.
10%.
That's what I'm telling her right now.
Yeah,
That's Hillary.
that was a question that I had. Is like typically I know we've talked about this is like the winning time for a women versus the winning time for men is usually within like 4 to 10% of them. So
Yeah,
like
but men, what's the men's world record right
The
now?
men's world record for the mile is well below 4 minutes.
Yeah,
yes.
like well
Yeah.
below 4 minutes, but she's only
And it's more than
3.9% off.
10% in the mile because it's a shorter distance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that percentage goes up as distance goes down, and
Right.
and the percentage
Okay.
goes down as distance goes up, with
Mhm.
like that inflection point probably at like the 200 mile and like the sixth
Yeah,
day.
it's 3 minutes 43 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got some time on the chopping block. We've also had like many decades since Roger Bannister of the floodgates opening for men, right? Like if someone like Faith could, in theory, break the 4 minute barrier, that opens up the floodgates for women in a big way, potentially, right? Where it's like, oh, this barrier can be broken. It's not impossible. Many of us probably thought that running sub 420 for women in the mile was
Mhm.
a big, big ask. And so for someone to go 407.64 is incredibly fast. They hypothesize that really, um, like there's been insufficient pacing and therefore drafting in this event. When she set that world record, just to set the stage a little bit more before we dive into to the math and kind of some of those confounding variables that I think Keely was able to pick apart. Um, they argue that she set that record in super suboptimal conditions, where
Mm.
she ran behind her pacers for only the first 900 meters of the event. And for the most part, she wasn't running close enough to them to benefit from any sort of drafting. And so what they're looking at for the entirety of this paper, and if you like math, it's a great paper for you. If you don't like math, it's a lot of math. They're looking at, can we optimize pacing? And there are some things that you can do legally and some things that you can't do legally to ratify a record, i.e. male pacers who could totally pace a sub 4 minute mile wouldn't be ratified then. Same sort of thing with pacers that start like two sets of pacers, one start like a set starting and then a set coming in at 800 meters also can't be ratified legally. So it's kind of like
Mhm.
a fun breaking two project versus like an actual legal world record.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like that's they argue about that a lot in the paper too of like how would this like is it fun? Can we just do this for funsies versus like how could it possibly in theory be done legally? Keely, you kind of dove a little bit into the metabolic consumption or kind of like tried to like ID that a bit more. And then also just kind of looking at some like shortcomings of this large math problem that they tried to solve.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. It's a ton of math. So if you guys are interested, we'll link the paper in our show notes. But basically what they do to figure this calculation out was like they had to figure out how much actual work this person was doing to like make this mile occur. And so they really dissected Faith's previous record, right? 407, just to try to like figure out how much energy consumption was going on. Sorry, I meant to say power. And basically then taking that, they took all these other studies who've looked at like different formations of runners and drafting and then like put all of that together to be like, okay, well, if you're using this much power and you have this much resistive force from the air, and then you have these pacers who are blocking this much air, like what could we do? And they ran the math a couple of times, and in a couple of the calculations, they found that they would run closer to 4 minutes, like not breaking that barrier. And then with a couple other studies that did different, protocols for pacing and found different pacing kind of coefficients, if you will, like multipliers that account for the people who are drafting or being the people that they're drafting off of. Then they found that maybe she could run 359, which is super fascinating. They also calculated like what she could run if she was in a world with no air resistance or like on a treadmill, and that was like 353 to 355. So I just thought it was super interesting. And obviously, like this is all with the caveat that they're taking like pre-created models, like exercise
Mhm.
physiology models that are calculating these numbers and they're applying them to Faith. And unfortunately, like a lot of those models are built around men and a lot of those models are built around like everyday athletes, maybe not people of her caliber. And so I'd say like if anything, they're probably underestimating her ability with pacers, but it's also just interesting because pacers are also typically men. And so I think figuring out like the strategy and how to train women to do it and like exactly knowing how that would work is it's just a fun math problem. And I know I like picture them doing this study and like writing this manuscript and they're probably all just laughing and having fun the whole time because it's like such a fun problem to try to pick apart, you know?
Oh, and they're like, okay, if we increased the efficiency of drafting to
Yep.
35% for 3 laps versus 2 laps versus
Yep.
4 laps, and it's like,
It's so
okay,
cool.
she gains this.
Oh
This
my
is like her
gosh.
her meters per second. That means she gains 2 seconds a lap or 1.6 seconds a lap. And then they go as far to say like when she ran the 407, it was like moderate temps, moderate humidity. In theory, if it was a little bit warmer, a little bit more humid, the air resistance goes down, but then you deal with thermoregulation issues and that becoming a factor. They said you could go to altitude, right, where the resistance is a little bit lower there, but then you have altitude.
Mhm.
as a factor. They go as far as
Yep.
to say, what if we could get Ating Mu
Yep.
and
Keely
Keely Hodgkinson to
Hodgkinson.
pace because they're tall? What if we get a bunch of
Yep.
really tall ladies to pace because then they would increase the efficiency of
Yep.
the pacing? So I
Or
love
just
that they're just
some
like,
Yep.
guys, like some big guys that can
Yeah.
run
But
fast for
then
like a
but then
lap.
they were like, yeah, but then the legs might be too long that she can't get close enough. So
Oh my gosh, that's so
there were
funny.
lots of factors.
yeah,
This
no, I mean they
reminds me.
could.
Yeah.
You could have a man pace the whole thing, but then it's
Then
not
that's not a world
legal,
record.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah, but
not you
none of
can't.
this would be legal. It's just like the fun thing
Well,
anyway.
no, if they had
Well,
pacers that could start with her and
mhm.
could only make it 1,000 meters, and
Then
she
it'd
only
be
had to run
legal.
600, she only had to run 600 something meters by herself, then it would be legal. They're just
Mm-mm-mm.
trying to get her past that 900-meter mark
Got it.
without pacers to give her as much kind of leg room, literally, as
Hmm.
possible. And so, in theory, you could like contrive a scenario where you're like, you need to have some people that can hang in there for like
See,
a
I
thousand
think
meters or
this is
1,200 meters.
it's all super cool. It's all like I like the hypotheticals. It reminds me of like grad school when we were doing these like chemistry models and like what was happening in like this binding, this mechanism where we had no idea how this chemical reaction was happening. But the cool thing with sport is that there's this thing that's not quantifiable. Like it's why we have such amazing performances at like Olympics or the Olympic trials. Like there is something too that if you get her hyped up enough, maybe she could do it. You know what I mean? Like it's not just based on the math, although I think it's really cool what they're
Totally.
doing.
You got to be mentally strong too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
believe,
I
quantify
love
before
it.
you believe.
At the end of the paper, too, just one last thing because it's super cute. And I've never said super cute and a math heavy research paper in the same sentence, but it was super cute because they're like, hey, Faith, like, we'd love for you to try this. Like they might have even had an exclamation mark, which I was like, I don't think anyone's ever typed an exclamation mark in a formal research document. So I think they were having a lot of fun with it. And
Yeah.
I can just see Roger just like absolutely like loving the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Totally. I know. I'll have to ask him about it. I
Bunch
haven't
of
talked to him in a
brainiacs.
while. Yep.
Bunch of brainiacs. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Shifting gears, and we're gonna try not to make this too somber because like runner safety can feel very scary, triggering. I guess that's something to say. This could like we're talking about runner safety today, like a little bit of a dive into an app that is coming out, into some research that I found out of the UK from our personal experiences. So I don't think anything is going to be too bad, but just wanted to like let you know what we're talking about in case this is like a surprise whatsoever. To set it up a little bit, I had this interesting piece come across my desk in like a sports wire or like a running industry update. And essentially, it was a piece of athletic tech that's been created by a medical device rep, Dina Lewis, after she was physically assaulted not once, but twice while running. And the app is called Running Mate, affectionately the quote, Uber for runners. Dina says in this PR piece for it, quote, 92% of women actually report that they don't feel safe when they're exercising outdoors. 60% of women report being harassed while they're running. That's just the number that has been reported. That doesn't include the number that don't report. So it's a pretty high number.
Hmm.
Effectively, what the app and this is different than other apps that I've seen that have been about like finding friends to run with that always give me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies as a woman being like, I don't really want to go around with a stranger that I've never met. What this app does is the app allows runners to schedule runs in advance or in real time. It's currently available in Boston, Austin, which rhymes, Tampa, Atlanta, West Palm Beach, and Salt Lake City, with plans to launch soon in Nashville, Charleston, Denver, and LA. Essentially, you go onto the app. Everyone, I think, like there are people that are working for the app. There are runners or walkers that are working for the app, and they have to be verified. I don't know what the safety mechanism is behind there, but essentially the runners, you pay $25 for a 1 to 5 mile run or $35 for a 5+ mile run. Again, runners are verified for safety. You can select which person you want to run with of like the available runners. And then they're used for general accompaniment. They said, oh, maybe this is ideal for travelers who might not sure where they could find a safe route to basically have a guided city running tour, et cetera, and so on. It's an interesting potential solution. It's very like it's obviously like prohibitively expensive for many people. But I just thought it was really interesting. And I don't know, like obviously the market is probably small because like I can't pay $25 to run every day. But I'm curious just that information, like thoughts, feelings, Is this app viable? Like, is it curious? Any general sensations there?
Mm, yeah, I think it might be cost prohibitive, but I mean, I could see a use for it, like you said, like traveling to different places. But I mean, my initial thoughts is like I use Strava for some of their different privacy settings that make that I think they've had some different updates that kind of can make it feel quite safe. But this is if I'm like running by myself because I don't normally run with people, or I could see like an app. It could be better if it was like you could crowdsource like a group run where people could go, like all the people instead of just like having people meet up, it could just be
Mhm.
like a group run in these different cities. Um, but that
Yeah,
are
like
all verified. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like, where does that money go? Is it going to
Yeah.
like the one safe vetted person that they're running with? So then that person is like a paid runner friend?
yes, so it's I can't remember what the exact breakdown
Oh,
is. They
interesting.
obviously there's like cost going into the app, but it's something like the runners paid like $20 for a 1 to 5 mile run or walk. All paces are available, or $25 or whatever for a five. I can't remember. It's like the company is taking 10% or something, and the person that is the verified runner is getting
Hmm.
90% or 80%. So obviously,
Mm-hmm.
the app has to generate revenue, and so that $25 doesn't entirely go to the runner that's being
Mm-hmm.
like the verified person, but a portion of it does. So in theory, you could be doing that for work
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I mean, I
or
don't
like
think it's a
a little
horrible
bonus.
idea. I probably would use it in pretty foreign cities, to be honest, like especially if I was there by myself. But I
Yeah,
do think
if I
it
showed
may
up to
be a little
Charleston by
cost
myself,
prohibitive.
yeah, if I showed up to Charleston by myself and I could pay someone $35 to go for an 8 mile run and like show
Yeah,
me around, like
probably would.
that's not
Yeah,
crazy. But
totally.
it's like that 1 to 5 mile range. That's elitist of me to be like, "Ah, it's only worth it at X amount of miles." But that math does have to math at some point in time. So it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Yeah. And I think too, like if it's, you can filter by gender, that would be really helpful. If you can filter by certain things, that would
Hmm.
probably be nice, because I think even if it's safe, I think still like I probably would prefer to go run with a woman or like a man that's friends with a woman I know or something, where you can like
Hmm.
try to crowdsource like vetting that person
Mhm.
somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know exactly how it's gonna go, but it's rolling out to more
But
cities
Hmm.
soon. It's currently live in a bunch of big cities. And I think that's kind of like it's really like designed for that urban interface. And I think that is like there are different safety concerns that come up in an urban interface, particularly right if you were like in a foreign city and you had to run before the trade show, before work that morning or whatnot. Like me going for a run at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. in an unfamiliar city does not feel as safe as me going for a run in an unfamiliar city at noon, for example, right? Like that feels very, very different. So, yeah, curious to see what comes of it. But that just like got me thinking about runner safety again, because we know that people are impacted, both in urban spaces and also in trail and rural spaces. There have been a number of stories shared more recently. I'm thinking mostly of like Olympian Gabby Thomas has made the news recently, reportedly having been stalked by a group of men who seem to get hostile when she refuses to sign stacks of photos. They seem to show up in airports, which is really creepy.
Hmm.
Um, she
Yikes.
posted about it online, and like Coco Gauff, the tennis player, was like, "Oh yeah, like I've had something similar happen to me. This is what I had to do about it." Ilona Mayer also came forward kind of with similar things, like dealing with stalkers. If you haven't read the pieces that came out around Emily Infield from a number of years
mm,
ago as well, had this insane recurrent stalker situation. Like this
mhm.
man was like medically unstable, and it was super, super scary. Like her life and the life of her then fiance, now husband, was like, I think it like not, it was not good. So this is that's a real phenomenon. So I've just been thinking a lot about like general runner safety. That changes a lot for these professional athletes, but basically everyone experiences it. Everyone experiences, unfortunately, some degree of harassment while being a human outside of our homes, inside our homes sometimes too. But that's another story for another day. And so safety is just top of mind for me. And we've heard from many of you too who are trying to get into trail running about those things, about those safety concerns, about, what do I need to bring with me? All of that kind of thing. And vice versa, trail runners showing up to an urban space and maybe feeling uncertain about those general safety things. So I looked to the literature to see if there's anything more recent about about these safety concerns about harassment in public spaces. And harassment, just like to set the tone for this. And obviously there are other dangers when it comes to urban and rural or trail or mountain running that go beyond human interactions. But generally, like public harassment can be verbal, which can include negative comments, catcalling, propositions, and also nonverbal, whistling, winking, flashing, physical contact, just people making you really uncomfortable. Like all of those things um, qualify in that kind of harassment bucket. Any sort of situation that makes you uncomfortable. And so I dove into the research, and I would just like to kind of like tick through a few things and then ask you guys some questions. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Sweet. Welcome to my TED Talk. It was a really cool study though. So they like went on runs with women and just like it was an interview style survey, basically what they did. And so they did set it up though by saying that more women than men fear trails. That can be they generally feel more vulnerable in during outdoor activities and fears associated with running, particularly trail running, falls and injuries, other fears associated with the general environment, and then potential male violence or harassment. And then they wanted to say that women do change their behaviors more than men to mitigate that fear and to mitigate to not mitigate their safety, but to try to put themselves in a better position of safety. Um, a lot of outdoor spaces can make women feel really isolated. Bushes, trees, all those things can be associated with concealed places and not feeling that they have a viable escape route. Are a number of reasons women reported feeling unsafe running in outdoor spaces. And we do know that women, when they don't feel safe in outdoor spaces, they go to the gym, right? They go to an indoor space where they feel safer running. And then we always bring up community, right? We'll just go for a group run, right? Like that's great. What a good option. Well, it's not a perfect solution because we do know that that doesn't mitigate all risk. And effectively, like you can be in theory, like you can experience harassment in a community setting as well. So just kind of like keeping that all in mind, what women are doing, particularly in comparison to their male counterparts. So when they did these interviews, these surveys with the women, they kind of identified four big themes, kind of suspicious male trail users, negotiating both like enjoying outdoor space, but while also feeling vulnerable, i.e. just like feeling less safe in some of those outdoor spaces. That could be from other humans, that could be animals, that could be, I don't know, you're in a mountainous environment and you feel physically vulnerable to the climate. They adopt running habits in response to people that they meet outside or other people having influence over their exposure. And then kind of reflecting on their lived experiences, they oftentimes feel guilt associated with responding a certain way to a situation that they deemed either in that moment or afterwards as unsafe. So I thought that was really like kind of very interesting when they set that up. They go on kind of like in more detail to say something to the effect of like when they quickly have to identify someone, they have to say this person belongs here or not. And by belonging, they're meaning like I think we've probably all experienced this, like being on a trail and seeing someone, particularly in a more rural or remote setting, who doesn't feel like they're in like trail appropriate clothing. I've definitely experienced that in like rural Montana where I'm like, there's a solo male human and they're in like casual, non-mountainous clothing and identifying them as like a person of concern, for example. And I'm wondering if you guys have experienced a moment, either a feeling that you had, an individual that you encountered, and you've modified your behavior like in general or to that moment.
Mm, I have. I mean, I think this is just because I've traveled a lot by myself to different countries, but I guess we'll talk more specifically in the United States, but just in different areas where like I don't know the area and I'm passing through there in my van, for instance. I've had to kind of to make adjustments based off of the maybe not necessarily people, but if something were to happen, it was kind of a little bit too far out there, removed, so that I just didn't feel comfortable kind of going out there by myself. And then sometimes like in certain areas where it wasn't like really a marked trail situation and maybe it was like I didn't get all the right intel, then it kind of made me feel uncomfortable just of like an area of running through. I wasn't sure if it was like private property going through someone's the yard, like dogs always are a concern for me.
Yeah.
That has been actually way more scary than anything in outside of the US as well as in the US. But yeah, for sure. And I think I'd change that. I definitely, and then, you know, so running at certain times of day. There's just certain times of days that I won't run at due to animal safety. I think we've talked about that on this show, but then also just, you know, just of like certain times of day where I just don't want to be running. Like I feel a little bit more exposed.
Yeah, so you've made some like general modifications and then you've made in-moment modifications of like, oh, I actually didn't understand the terrain or the map that I was given or the information I was given, so
Mhm.
I need to modify on the run, but also like, oh, like I'm running by myself and I know that mountain lions are more active at dawn
Mhm.
and dusk and I'm like
Totally.
uncomfy running in certain environments or situations. Like that
Right.
is a very real concern. So it's like choose the man or the bear. You choose the bear, choose the mountain lion or the man. Like mountain lions are pretty freaky.
Yeah. Although,
So
gosh,
that is
grizzly
another.
bear, running in grizzly bear country. Oof, that's a little bit.
Oh, also
I
very,
think
very
people are
scary.
way scarier.
I
Oh
think
gosh.
generally, no, but I think generally speaking, right? Like I think
You're right
people,
though. It's true. I've actually felt like a little bit more, yeah, like, and this has sometimes happened like on an, I've had to make adjustments, maybe more of an urban trail. Like when I was running in San Francisco and there's a lot of great urban trails there, but like where I had parked my van at this like place of this that I had a meeting at. So I parked my van there and I was starting for a run there and I made a wrong turn. I'm going through a different neighborhood. Then I have to make like adjustments there. But you're right. It's like, it's kind of more of like a, that's been like an urban trail situation where I've had to make a little bit more
Mhm.
adjustments.
yeah. And I think that's
Yeah.
like the general sentiment with women too, is that like, yes, like particularly I think in Europe there's less animal worry besides maybe like dogs, I think in
Yeah.
general. Like just
Sheepdog,
like sheepdogs
scariest
are
thing ever.
scary, right? Like orchard dogs are pretty scary. Um, versus in the US, like we do have like in North America, we do have like some big animal concerns, be it bears, cougars, etc. I think that is very different. But I think for the most part, you're right. Like most women experience this like other individual fear. They're concerned about like just like running into the wrong person on the wrong day,
Mm,
um, in the wrong place. Yeah, not having that escape route, not having that ability to keep yourself safe is super freaky. And I do think it's really limiting. I do think that's why like someone didn't tweet because I'm not on Twitter anymore, but it was like threads and someone's like, oh, I'm at the gym and like I see all these people in the treadmills and I'm like, you guys know about outside, right? And Jocelyn,
mhm,
this amazing marathoner from LA, responded and said, you know about harassment, right? Like people like don't judge, like, you don't know why they're there. Like don't judge people for like
Mhm.
exercising not outside because like, you know what? Maybe this is the only place that they feel safe. This is the only place where they feel like they can run comfortably by themselves.
Mhm.
They don't have a friend to run with every day. Like this is the one place where they can do so safely. Like don't judge. So I do think that's a very valid concern. Keely, what about you? Like general stuff as far as like, have you ever had a sensation? Have you ever had an encounter? Have you ever like had to modify either on the fly or like things that you're doing just kind of like in your day to day? You're running at 5:30 in the
Yeah.
morning,
I mean, I
you
feel
know?
like this is my life. I literally think about this all the time.
Yeah, constantly.
Yeah, like I've had weird encounters in rural PA and rural areas, obviously, like anybody does. Like my weirdest being a car with just a guy and his wife in it drives by, and then the wife's gone. The car comes back, passes me like four times, and I'm like, hard no, just start sprinting. So there's those weird scenarios where you're like, this is actually bad because I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't know what's going on. But I feel like what's more like relatable most likely is the day to day. Like I think about this risk every single day. Like just for instance, the other day I was talking to a neighbor who's totally harmless, a good friend, but he was like, "Oh yeah, you run every morning at this time." And I'm like, "Oh,
Oh,
like
you know
people
that.
watch, right?" And so it's like if he can watch, then like other people can watch as well. And so I don't do the same exact routine every morning now. Like I'll run from one place one day, a different time the next day. I'll drive for two of the days. And I really try to switch it up now because I'm like, people can watch this behavior. I'm in a city, and I don't like that feeling. And, most of the time we run on this street that's very monotonous, but it gets a lot of older people who are out there walking, a lot of other runners. But even so, like with, hopefully predominance in numbers, you still come across some people that should not be up there sometimes. Like the other morning, there was a person on a bike with a poncho on, like a big frayed out poncho, driving real slow, no headlamp. You're like, that does not belong. Like, turn around and
That
run the
make
other
this is
way.
giving me the unsafe feeling, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to say
Yeah.
like who belongs, who doesn't belong. Like there can be I think that people from like feel like people of color probably feel like they don't belong in a lot of
Mm,
spaces. And that's
true.
not what we're
Yep.
trying to like get at here. We're trying to be
Mhm.
like the dude that I encountered in Montana was like
Yep.
a big white guy out in the
Mhm.
woods. Like not, it's not like you can hike in jeans. People hike in jeans all the time, but it wasn't like it was weirder
Mhm.
than that. And I was like, you're by yourself. I am by myself. I do not like this situation. Like I'm gonna like haul ass this other direction
Mhm.
because I don't want this encounter to be a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust
Right.
your gut too.
Totally. And I think it's a good reminder because, I mean, all of us, maybe I'll speak to myself. I didn't grow up in the age of like sharing everything and having everything accessible all the time. And so I think it's really important, especially for new runners or younger runners who are coming onto the trail, where it's like kind of just normal to share your location all the time, like to share everything on Strava, or to share everything on different apps and, even on Instagram and stuff. And you can find all that information all of the time. And I think it could be just a little bit more prudent to be aware and to maybe be a little bit not secretive, but just be like you said, Keely, like more purposeful in how you kind of change up your routine. Because privacy is a valuable thing. And if you have all that information out there all the time, I can adjust my privacy settings on Strava to like hide X number of miles from the start and finish of my run. But you still can know like a certain proximity, right? But it's being a little bit more like a little bit more aware of all the things that we can share, and especially when safety is involved in your location, and if you're running, at certain times of day where there's not a lot of people out there, like you can put yourself more at risk. So I think it's just a good reminder. Yeah,
Yeah.
in the day and age where we might overshare where we are all the time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people like we are very fortunate that we get to run in more trail dedicated spaces that I think overwhelmingly feel a lot quote unquote safer. It is that kind of like urban to trail interface that I think, which is like what most people have access to, right? Like most people in Seattle,
Mhm.
that's like their accesses are these like urban to trail spaces. In San Francisco, I lived a block off of Golden Gate Park. It was awesome, but like you're
Yeah.
in an urban space. Table Mountain in Cape Town, like you are in an urban to trail space. And so I think
Mhm.
that most of
Super
the
cool.
world experiences trail running in this like urban overlap. And like to me, that is where these questions kind of arise from of like keeping yourself safe in those environments. Like the way I ran in Golden Gate Park before sunup was very different than how I ran in Golden Gate Park in the middle of the day. Just because
Mhm.
it's like
Totally.
particularly when I'm by myself, if I was with someone, with my dog, with Steven, with a group of friends, like that also changed my behavior, like outside of time of day as well. But it's like, yeah, you have to be wow, you have to be constantly thinking about that. And I don't think men in our lives or in our communities have to think about it the same way we do. They've never run home from a bar instead of walking because it felt safer to
Mhm.
run home. They've never
Mhm.
put their keys between their knuckles because
Oh
they're
yeah.
freaked out walking to their car. Like this is but that is a universal experience by women, right? Like that is a universal experience across
Mhm.
age, across race, across all of it. Like those are universal experiences. And so I think it's like something that's very top of mind for us that if you're a guy listening to this is why you wig us out sometimes because it's
This
like
is
we
why you
can't
should
tell
always say hello.
if you're safe or not. So yeah, I know it's like this is not giving us we're not giving great advice for you right now, but like it is something that like just so you know, we're constantly thinking about it. We're constantly evaluating, are you a friend or a foe? When we run into you on a trail and we're by ourselves, or we run into you in the trail and it's dark out, like this is a constant like thing going on in our minds. An interesting thing they brought up too was like how outside perspective influenced people's feelings about safety. And the example given in particular was they were talking to a couple moms in it, and so they felt like irresponsible potentially. Like if they're being unsafe, they're like, I'm a mom, I can't be this irresponsible. Like, why I can't put myself in jeopardy. But the bigger one was actually like their partners or their friends or their family. My parents do this. I love my parents, but they're definitely like, are you sure that's a good idea? Um, but can you imagine that, right? Like you're like, hey, I really want to go for this run, and your partner says, hey, like it's dark out. Like, are you sure that's a good idea? Like that is like a very thoughtful and like innocuous thing to say, but it also like impacts how you feel about your safety, right? Like that's a real Hillary's laughing. Hillary, have you experienced this recently?
I'm so sorry. Yes, because like this like hits really home from her for me in like two ways. So one, it's like, when like someone learns about my accident or whatever, and they're like, be careful. And I'm like, you think I'm not gonna be careful? I'm just gonna like chuck myself off of a cliff? Like, yeah, I know, I'm gonna be careful. Like, I am like whatever. So I get it. I get what the example that you just used, but sometimes I like get a little snarky. I'm like, what do you think? Like, I'm not gonna try to fall or like try to get in trouble. But this also just reminds me of something too. It's like in psychological studies, like when trying like an athlete is before like a FTP test on a bike or a threshold test on a treadmill. And it's like the positive self-talk versus the negative self-talk before the event. And it's measurable that athletes actually do worse if they've basically tired going into it from mental fatigue from like doing certain tasks like a
Mhm.
math problem or they experience like negative self-talk and doubt from someone else outside like saying that to them and then they kind of ruminate on it. So like that can, to me can be a little bit of that, like there can be a little bit of, oh, like wearing as someone's concern, maybe I should second like I should think about this if this is like not a great route to do, or it's just adding a little bit more of like doubting yourself. Like, so I don't know.
Keely, is JT ever like bring all the dogs, Keely? You can go for a run, but you must bring all the dogs with you.
Always, yeah. I used to run from the house up on Skyline and run on the trails by myself a lot and would leave my phone sometimes, and that got stopped very
Yeah.
quickly. Yeah, but now, I mean, I like taking, if I'm running at weird hours and I'm not with someone else or I'm not up on Fairmount, which I think is really safe. Maybe I'll cut that out. I'm not running the road that I think is really safe. I don't need people knowing where I'm running. I will take my dog Eddie because he is our newest dog and he is massive and he's black. And like doesn't matter if he's a scaredy dog or an aggressive dog, people do not want to mess with a black big dog. So I feel very safe. And then sometimes I run with both dogs and then you're like, definitely no one's messing with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I thought this is like horrible, but I thought that to myself all the time in Golden Gate Park where I was like, man, if something happened, like I would just be so pissed that they're ruining my day that I think I would lose it. Like I think I would just lose it on them. And like maybe they'd be like, wow, this is like too much work. Like she's just like too
Oh my
much. Like
gosh.
I can't deal with her. So like I'm
Yeah.
just not gonna bother type of thing. But it's like that's a
Mhm.
real thought, which is
I
not
joked
ideal.
about this the
Yeah.
other day. Like I was not having the best day and like someone got some like hilly fury, which can be a little bit scary.
Mm,
So, if that happens, watch
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
You don't want it.
I was reflecting on this a little bit. I think I want to acknowledge that I'm also 6 feet tall, so I probably get less targeted than other women. And I think
Mm,
putting myself in other people's shoes, it makes me really feel for those who choose to not exercise or exercise on a treadmill or do, less exercise because they don't feel safe. Because I think back to how many times I've felt unsafe, and when it is in the moment and you feel really scared, you're like, why am I doing this? Like, a fight or flight is activated. I'm risking like my
mm,
life for this thing that is so not necessary, right? Like, we don't need that in our lives. And so I can totally just like understand that if you feel scared and you're easily targeted, that does not make running or exercising in any capacity something that is enjoyable or even feasible. And that makes me really sad.
Yeah. It was
And
it. Oh, sorry.
no, I just wanted to say one thing about like also that because that reminds me of like the harassment thing. Like, I mean, I even notice sometimes like I notice sometimes I'm feeling like down or like sometimes it's harder even like to get outside and it's just like because it sometimes feels like all eyes are on me and I think as women like it can feel that way. I've certainly felt that way in certain urban environments where it's like if you're getting catcalled or like just weird comments about like when you're trying to do this thing to clear your mind or like train for a goal and then someone else is like making comments about either your physical appearance or and it can make you feel a certain way that can feel, I mean, I think that's a universal experience that a lot of women have, and maybe that can deter them from going in like these outdoor and like more beautiful environments. But I know it's something I've certainly experienced, and yeah, it can bring you down, especially on certain days you're just struggling to get out the door.
Yeah. It's like I feel like I experience this more maybe in Montana, just like a college town that I do, like where I'm running in Seattle sometimes. But there was traffic backed up along the like bike path that runs along I-90. And like traffic was just like kind of stalled out. And this guy rolled down his window and he yelled, "Hey, like, you want to go on a date? I've got a job and a car." Or something like it was something like he's like he gave his credentials. It was like I'm a single dad with a job and a car, like a good job in a car. And I was like, "Oh, that's not, you're not like helping right now. It's not selling it." But I was like, I kind of had to laugh. I was like, wow, that was like a very specific cat call. I was like the guy that cat calls like nicely, where they're like, you look like you put like your laundry away after it's clean, or like, you look, yeah, like you look like you load the dishwasher properly. Like
I mean,
there
if
are,
anyone's gonna like catcall a runner, be like, I can cook. Like, here you go.
yeah.
Like, you want a
Do
good
you
meal
need do you
after?
do you need snacks? Like my pantry is loaded. Um, yeah, maybe just don't say anything. But
Yeah.
one of the interesting things though is that like what the final thing that women really expressed in this study, again, this was done in the UK post Me Too. It was actually fairly recent. I think it was 2024, or 2025 even. But they talked about like this like the feeling of guilt after the fact. And so they quote, despite past threats, after initially constructing a man as a threat, runners felt a sense of guilt, using language such as poor guy, he was probably just out walking on the hills. Or as Michelle put it, quote, sometimes I think you are not right to judge in that situation, and I feel bad sometimes about being suspicious. But there was also like the what if mind as well. And again, I think that speaks to being a woman in these environments where like we've had to have our guard up for so long and still had to have our guard up when it comes to safety. But I've also experienced that, right? Like the guy that I ran into that spooked me in Montana, I was like, well, he's probably just out here enjoying nature. Like I'm being a dick because I was afraid of him. But that what if is like, or he could have hurt me. And it's like that what if is like really strong. And I think it's like a good reminder to listen to your gut, but also don't judge yourself too critically if you had that moment of like I felt unsafe and I made change. I did not hurt this other person. I made changes to keep myself safe in that moment. Right? Like I made changes to like to keep myself safe. I did not harm them. I did not interact with them, whatever it might be. And it is a very delicate balance though, it feels like sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I was wondering, I was going to ask you guys, do you feel better or worse if the person that is initially a little bit sketchy, seeming from afar, if they will look you in the eyes and say something, does that make you feel better or worse?
I think generally when I've had like a good like I've had good interactions with people too where like from afar I'm like, "Oh, like what's going on up here?" And then I like have that interaction and they're like, "Oh, have a great day." Or like, "Oh, it's a beautiful day out," or something. Like generally it's like and I don't shy away. Like I live in a pretty urban environment. There are numerous encampments by where we live. Like we're by a bunch of really important resources in the city. That is like that is part of life. I like would not want to be unhoused in Seattle in the winter. It is awful. But like very, very real, like in my neighborhood in particular. And so it's like even those interactions, right? Like I don't shy away from not treating that person like a person because they are a person. Um, at the end of the day. And so I try to have that human interaction with people for the most part. And generally speaking, it makes me feel better about the interaction on the backside, unless they start with yelling at me. And then it's normal. I don't feel as good about it.
Yeah, same. I think it's just like if you're coming up on someone and they like divert their eyes and you're on a trail and they divert their eyes, don't look at you and like kind of like creep by. It's like that's doesn't give me the good feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I think there's little things you can do to make people, if you are someone who might be perceived as a threat ever, like if you're a guy that's running in the dark and there's maybe a woman you come across who's running by herself in the dark, like you could always just like say like good morning or like have a good run and like I don't know, make it seem like you're a human, like the humanness of everything makes everything feel a little less scary.
Yeah, it's like that, like say hi, be nice. And it's hard. Like it's obviously like you're doing your thing. And I'm sure people are told mixed things, right? Like engage, don't engage, like give a lot
Totally.
of space. Like kind of cue off whatever they're doing. Like I'm sure it's hard either way. I always lead with like a good morning or a howdy or a like this is just like like that's like how I interact with anyone on the trail. Like I generally don't do like an on your left or on your right or just like breathe heavily. I'm generally like a I like to do like a more like gregarious greeting than that. Mostly because I can't say on your left or on your right without sounding like a total dick. And so I don't know. I just think like you're sharing a space with people and like everyone has like I think that's not necessarily just a privilege. It should be a right to be able to be out in those spaces. And so, but you're also humans interacting with other humans. And so it's like, remember at the end of the day that like you should be treating each other like humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess just like generally maybe talking a little bit about some runner safety things that we do in urban environments and then things that we do in trail environments because people are always like what should I be concerned about or what matters? And I'm wondering, starting maybe with urban spaces and then moving into like trail and mountainous spaces, like what do you think about or what do you do when running in these spaces? Keely, you mentioned like you're mixing things up because like people do, like people like your routine is a routine and that is a trackable thing. I'm wondering if there are any other adjustments that you've made. Oh, I just
Um,
sneezed so
yeah, I
badly.
mean, I run with pepper spray every single day when I'm running at weird times. So that's probably that is my one constant thing that I do always.
Yeah. I have my phone with me too at all
And my
times. It's
phone.
like that sounds I would love like I'm like, oh, I should just leave my phone behind. If I'm running with a friend and they have their phone, I'll leave my phone behind sometimes, but otherwise I have my phone on me. My location is shared with Steven.
Mhm.
And even if I'm just like running here locally, I'll like tell Steven like when I'm supposed to be back. Like, hey, I'm going
Mhm.
like no more than like I'm running for 40 minutes, no more than an hour. Like, I'm gonna run this loop in our neighborhood or I'm gonna like head this direction just so that he has a general idea of like
Mhm.
where I have taken myself. But yeah, I also, particularly if I'm running before it's light out or after it's dark, I've been carrying pepper spray as well, like running from my house.
Mhm.
You know, it's a deterrent, and sometimes it's like not bad people, but sometimes in the wrong place at the wrong time, and
Mhm.
it's a good safety mechanism.
Yeah.
Is yours pink or is it black?
Pink,
Mine's
I
pink.
thought so. I knew it.
obviously.
Obviously, if you're a US listener, yeah, you can find it pretty easy. But I do like that pink is like the default color for pepper
I
spray
know, me too.
Yeah,
sometimes.
me too.
Okay. I also any other differences, Hillary? Like I feel like you probably do more trail time than us, but you do periodically, particularly when you're traveling, have to do some
Yeah.
urban running. Anything specific that you do on like urban runs?
Yeah, like that is just basically, I mean, if I have a friend I can go with that, but that's not always, that's not always doable. But I usually like ask people in the area where it's like where kind of crowdsource it, like where it'd be a safe place to go. And then I always have my phone, because I can't always take pepper spray on the airplane.
Yeah, it turns out they don't like it when you try to bring weapons through security.
But I
But
have my keys. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So a safety device and your phone is a safety device. I think that's
Mhm.
important to remember. Um, it can come in handy. I like not everyone can travel with pepper spray, not everyone can have a dog, but I do like also enjoy having Pete with me. I wanted to get a dog when I was in Montana, actually more for animal
Mm.
deterring than human deterring. Because yeah, bears and cougars were a really real threat when we were in Bozeman, even more so now. The bear population is crazy. But it's now I feel like Pete's more of my human deterrent than anything. Okay, switching to trails because many of you too are coming in from road to trails. And I think I think the three of us are like urban running is way scarier than trail running,
Yeah.
but that is not the general impression, I think, out there as well. And so I'm wondering, what do you personally do when it comes to trail running safety? And this could be, does it change based on location? Is it something that you're doing on every run? Is there a difference between going for a longer remote run, mountainous run, than a quote unquote casual trail run? Like what are both of you doing from a safety perspective in that regard?
Yes, I mean, it's a kind of the same thing. Like I always bring my phone. And if I'm by myself, like people like, I have my location shared with certain people so they kind of know where I'm going or if I'm with someone. Um, but then if it's even if it is like like a medium length run, and it's certainly if it's
Define medium length run.
well, this is, I think it depends on where you're going. I guess I would say if you kind of go up in altitude or in like a more remote space that's separated from an urban environment, like I always bring like food and water and a layer. Just because things can change really quickly. This is always on my long runs. If they're more separated from an urban space, right? Like I live in Boulder, so I can, like I'm kind of accessible to people and I can hike, like hitchhike down, like, if things get bad and you're not too far away from the city. But if you're in more of a new space, and this is if I'm running in a new area that I don't know, I always bring those things with me. And one thing that I've been running with me if I'm in a new area, no matter where I am, is this it's kind of like a spot tracker, like a GPS thing, but it's this Motorola Defy. It's just an easier interface to use, and I can text on my phone and like send location updates and things like that. That's just a constant that I bring with me on every like new place that I'm running in, just for like an added sense of security. If something were to happen and I don't have cell phone service, that's always a backup.
You just can't bring it to India because India believes that like Garmin inReach devices and Motorola devices like that are satellite phones and they will try to send you to prison. So anywhere that's new except for India because you will get
Okay,
arrested or detained.
good to
Um,
know.
yeah, it is good to know. Keely, what about you? What are you thinking about when it comes to trail running safety? Things that you do on every run versus things that you do based on location or the length of the run?
I do kind of what you do. So I always take my phone. I'll tell JT, potentially even someone else, like have two people that know where I'm going, like what route I'm doing. I'll download the route on my phone if it's a new place. And then pack like for me, I always pack like a little first aid kit. I always pack extra snacks. If it's super remote, I'll take an extra water filter. So just things that, it's like, yeah, the safety part is important, but also if you ended up getting lost or something
Mm.
or having to divert from something that made you feel unsafe, and then all of a sudden the run takes you way longer. It's just good to have all those things back up too. And so I feel like I just try to be on top of it. And then yeah, having someone know where you are and the route you're on is obviously like so important in case anything does happen.
I guess question for you, what is in your little first aid kit? Like just like basics. What do you generally take with you?
I just have like a normal first aid kit, so it's whatever's in the normal one. So I'd say it normally has like antihistamine, so like allergy meds, it has pain meds, it has like antibiotic cream. So like if you have a cut, and then I always pack like an extra like super tight kind of wrap kind of thing. So if it's like you sprain an ankle or if you get a big gash, like just things to like
And something
tourniquet or
adhesive,
wrap
yeah.
with. Yeah, exactly. So it's nothing crazy, but just your normal run of the mill one in a little waterproof baggie, and then always the extra like adhesive type thing.
Yeah, I think it's important when Stephen and I do any sort of longer backcountry run, one of us is carrying like a first aid kit like that, or even like I'm carrying part of it, he's carrying part of it. And
Nice.
your first aid kit's gonna get better and better, Keely, now that you're in medical
Totally.
school.
I'm gonna bring everything. I'm gonna get an EKG. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, Keely's got an AED with her. No, it's like eventually like it's like, oh cool, like I can bring X, Y, or Z thing
yeah,
with me on the
seriously.
trail. Our ski first aid kits are pretty robust for that reason because it's like, oh, like what are we giving you when you break your femur? Like
Yeah,
type of thing. But I've like
totally.
I experienced this in a big way this year because I ran section J of the PCT by myself and it's like 70 miles
Mm.
point to point. There's no good bail. Like the bailout point is not really shorter. It takes you into the Tiana way and like someone can come get you from there, but it's like they're going to be there in like 6 hours type of thing.
Hmm.
So and I like tripped a couple times or like in the first like marathon of it and I was like and I fell really hard one of those times and I was like okay, like you need to like figure your shit out because like you can't break your, I mean, you can break your arm out here, you'll be fine. It's gonna suck. But it's like I really like cannot break anything more than that because it would be really bad. Um, and so my everyday runs, I'm bringing my phone, particularly if I'm by myself. Um, oftentimes like I even think about like if I'm running at Tiger or Cougar, like you're generally within like 2 to 3 miles of the car or a road, like just because of like the way like fire roads intercept and stuff. So I feel a little bit safer there. Someone always knows where I'm going. Um, my location is shared with Steven. A friend might know when I'm supposed to be back. And then like we are in this really cool but very scary zone in which like we can go run off of I-90 in the summer and you're like in the mountains proper. Anna Fisher was out here this past summer and broke her ankle on like a run that we do like not infrequently. She was out there with her partner Jimmy. He had to run out and call search and rescue and she broke her ankle. They had to physically like search and rescue to come in and cart her out like because she couldn't walk out on it. And it
Hmm.
was like you're not it's like she broke it kind of in the midway point of the loop, which is like the worst possible place to break your ankle because it's like you're like going 7 miles one way or 7 miles the other way type of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so really not ideal, but like they had some layers with them. They had food with them. They like had ability to make her comfortable. But you're so close to civilization in a lot of ways and you're so far away at the same time. And so really wanting to have that first aid kind of list locked down. I got stung by so many bees this summer and like I'm running with Pete and I get stung by a bee and Pete's getting stung by a bee and it's like so I wasn't carrying antihistamines on some of these runs and I was like crap, I need to carry antihistamines because like if Pete has a really bad reaction or if I have a bad reaction or run into someone else having a bad reaction because there's all these ground hornets nests, like I want to be able to administer at least an antihistamine. And then I started carrying my Garmin InReach Mini, hashtag not sponsored. Um, we're far enough in now. Garmin, if you find this, I love my Garmin InReach Mini, but we're deep enough in the podcast. I think I'm safe. No, I bring it with me on, I like for the summer season in particular, I like upcharged myself. Like I pay for like the most premium messaging subscription so that I can like not just send pre-programmed messages from my phone on it. Like I can like have a full conversation with anyone in my phone from my Garmin. Like it's worth paying that monthly fee from like a safety perspective so that I can communicate exactly what's going on, exactly where I am, not just the like all's good, a little bit late or whatever like your preset messages are. And that became a big deal. Like from like, and I went from even like not having it, I'd have it with me, but I wouldn't have it on. And then I started on some of these longer runs that I was doing, like having it with me, having it on and sending Steven the track of it or someone else the track of it while I was running so that like you just know then like where I am, if I'm on the run, if I'm off course, etc. Like they have that information. And that was really, really meaningful. The new iPhones have the ability to like SOS off of the cellular network now. Like you basically have a inReach in your pocket with the modern iPhones, which is really, really cool to give you that satellite communication option in a case of like a dire emergency. Some skiers got rescued recently because they literally SOS'd off of their Apple Watch off of the phone.
Nice.
And like Snoqualmie Search and Rescue was able to fly helis in and pull them out. Like this guy had a bad leg break. It's crazy. So it's like, yes, I carry layers. I carry people know where I am if I'm particularly when I'm by myself. If I'm not by myself, people still know where I am. Um, and then yeah, having the map downloaded on I like Gaia in particular over like downloading on Strava or downloading on Onyx. And being really familiar with the mapping stuff, particularly as you venture out further from like your local trails to like a more mountainous route or something, being really familiar with like how that mapping app works and being able to locate yourself on it and understand trails. You can also download all that information to be available offline and be able to track yourself on the map. It's really, really handy. Um, so there's a lot of stuff you could be using, and that can seem really stressful. But I do think as you venture out further and further, like just familiarizing yourself with those skills and taking the time to do so, slowing down on a run, to overuse something like Gaia is a great way to practice it. I'll do it at trail junctions just to be like, yep, like I know exactly where I am. I want to take a right here. Great. Okay. So I think that's really important as well. I think that's it. I'm sure we just prompted more questions than answers, to be honest, but I want to say that you can trail run safely. I feel like this is the last thing I want to say. And then you guys can tell me if I'm crazy and then we can move on to Society Slam. But in skiing, we have this thing where we talk about the stories we tell ourselves that avalanche risk is a big deal in the backcountry. Um, And there are many days where we come back from a backcountry ski and we tell ourselves, wow, we were so safe. We did such a good job. We managed everything super well, like pat ourselves on the back, like good job. When really, like, there's probably a large percentage of the time, maybe it's 50%, maybe it's more, depending on who you are and how and what your risk tolerance is, where we got lucky. We weren't safe, we got lucky. Right. And so I think that it's really easy to be like, trail running is super safe, nothing can ever go wrong, woohoo, when like, yeah, just like I think it's important to kind of like continue to verify what you're doing and putting it into practice so that you can truly not just tell yourself you were safe, but tell yourself that like you took the steps appropriate to keep yourself safe in the backcountry. Okay, that's it. They're gonna play the music to pull me off stage. Um, Before we Society Slam, though, we have to give a little bit more love to the folks over at Rabbit. Keely, can we tease maybe what you might be wearing at an upcoming event? Do you have any specific product that you're really excited about?
Well, I'm gonna wear the mauve pink hat for
The
my
ice
next
hat for
race.
sure.
Yeah, of
Nice.
course. And then currently wearing downtime jacket. I feel like I've just been living in this stuff to be honest, because it's so warm. I just like layer. Like, how cold am I today? Okay, downtime jacket plus vest plus puffy is when it's really cold. Subtract one.
I love it.
I've been loving it. The fit is so nice. Big fan of everything in their current line. So yeah, I would go check it out and don't forget to use our code so you get a nice 10% off.
Yeah,
Trail March.
Trail March, the
March.
month of March.
March
When
over
this comes
there.
out, you'll have like 6 more days to use it. So get on it. And we'll keep updating those codes for you as well. So big shout out to Rabbit. Okay, let's slam. I'm taking the first one because I called dibs. It says, hello, Corinne, Hillary, and Keely, and whoever else reads these. It's just us. And truly, it's just Keely and Hillary. I'm not responsible enough to have the reins of the Instagram account. They say, I'm a new listener and I love your podcast. I have it on every minute I can, and I'm amazed each episode. I'm so glad you have 95, now 96 episodes to catch up on. I love the science, the stories, the interviews. I even like the ads. WTF. I don't know who I am anymore. In episode 94, you read a listener's email and it almost made me fall. She was talking about her feelings regarding her changing body, i.e., deflated breasts. I can relate. I can relate. I can relate. Not only have I completely changed my body and training, but aging and postmenopause changes have me wondering who this saggy hag is in the bathroom mirror. We have to be kinder to ourselves than that, dear listener. I'm dealing with it by working with my thoughts, but it has also affected my 30-year marriage. I am so sorry. That's like one of those things where it's like you're working on yourself, but you're working on everything else going on. Um, hmm, they have a wonderful marriage, but just dealing with it, right? They're like hurt over these changes. Um, but yeah, they not enough to change because I love running and I love training and I would love to hear more about this topic. So yeah, like body changes are very real. It can impact how you feel about yourself. It can impact how your partner feels about you, which would be devastating. I'm really sorry if that is what you are experiencing, but more than anything, you're not alone, right? Like you heard this question come in from a listener, and that person's not alone because you feel this exact same thing, and you are definitely not alone because many people experience this. Bodies change over time, body changes with training, both positive and negative. And I think the big takeaway, right, is that like this is a common phenomenon, and many people feel this exact same way. So continue to reach out and find that community because there are people that very much are going to resonate with what you said. Okay, someone take the next one. Maybe Hilly, take these next two.
Yeah. So hi, I just started listening to y'all's podcast. I love it. And remember y'all bringing up the idea of a women's sports bar at one point. Yes, we did. And just saw that one is opening in Austin, Texas. So that's pretty cool. The revolution is spreading. So yeah, okay, well, and we can link that. They linked to it what it's opening in Austin. And then this next one I wanted to read kind of as a reminder. It says, hi, I just listened to your podcast. I took a deep dive into iron. I'm an athletic trainer that works with cross country and Nordic skiing athletes, as well as an ultra runner myself. I greatly enjoyed the episode and was hoping you could provide some more article links. And basically they're in the process of adding baseline tests for their endurance athletes, and I want to provide our team physicians some very relevant material on the matter. Thanks for all that you do. Awesome that you listened to it. That wasn't our only deep dive on iron. We do a lot of other deep dives on here, and obviously we all love science. And it's just a reminder that we do link all of the articles that we reference in our podcast in the show notes. So that's just in that little like summary when you click on the pod in whatever app that you listen to, all that information is linked there. So you have the links at your fingertips. We're just trying to equip everyone with more knowledge. So yeah, that's just a reminder for all of our episodes.
I love it. Keely, you got a question for us to ruminate on before we cut you all off this week.
Okay, we got a question. I've been dealing with a niggle for a while now that came on quite suddenly. I went to see my physio who told me he thought it was probably a stress reaction or fracture in my tibia, and he told me that if it's a stress reaction, I only need to take 2 weeks off. So that's what I'm planning to do. However, my coach wants me to get an MRI to make sure that it's just a reaction. But some of my friends have told me that when they get an MRI, sometimes their doctors won't let them run for more than a month. And I don't want to take that time off. So I don't think I should go get the image. What do you guys think? Should I go get an image right now, even though that means I might have to take more time off? Why can't I just take the 2 weeks off now and then resume? Well,
Oh man.
Well, that's yeah.
You can take
That's
the time off now or you can take the time off later. But it sounds like, yeah,
well,
yeah, it's hard.
that is hard. I mean, I've always just because, I mean, I know all of us have had injuries and I'd always play the safe rather than sorry. It's like exactly what you said, Corinne. You can take the time off now, but if it is a stress reaction or something, there's different grades of stress reactions, like 1 through 4. And if it's a 4 or if it's a 1 and you take 2 weeks off, it might heal, but it might not. If it's a 2 or 3, and then if after that 2 weeks it still starts nagging you, it can still get worse. And then a reaction can turn into a fracture. And then that's actually more time off, more than a month, because the average healing for bones is 6 to 10 weeks, depending on where it's at. So I think more information is better and to kind of get that. So I would listen to your coach. She sounds like, or she or he, I say she, but they sound like a smart person. So, and maybe they have some experience with injuries themselves. So,
Yeah, I think it's difficult, right? Because it's I don't know, you don't want to know sometimes. And there are certain areas that I don't like imaging more than others. Feet are like hard to image because like everything will show up there. Like things that
yeah,
aren't bothering you will show up in
yeah,
a foot MRI. There are a lot of confounding things that come up, but things like a tibia, kind of these like long
bigger bone.
bones, they're
Mhm.
pretty like they image pretty well, I would say, and like you'll get a clearer picture of like what's actually going on. And because I worry that this athlete says, I'm gonna take 2 weeks off, then I'm going back like zero to hero, baby. Like I'm running 70 miles a week again, or whatever it is. Like, not like it's 2 weeks off and then it's like incremental building back up. So I'd rather you get the MRI and like know where you are in that build. And this all this time counts, right? Like the thing is that if you take 2 weeks off and you start running and then it starts hurting again, and then you get an MRI 4 weeks from now, you're going back to zero, babe. Like you're going all the way back to like taking 6 weeks off again, as opposed to like taking 2 weeks off, getting an MRI, and like if that means it's extended to 4 weeks, you've already got it's like time served. Okay, like you've done 2 weeks, you've done 3 weeks, maybe you've done 4 weeks off of running. By the time you get the MRI results, that's time served, and then you can like slowly start to build back in again. And I just worry that this is a person who's like, I want to go zero to hero, baby. Like I'm in the penalty box for 2 weeks, and then I'm like back at it, and that is very better
Yeah.
safe than sorry. You're gonna have to take the time off at some point if this is a stress fracture or a stress fracture in the making. And I'd rather you do that now and not have it become a stress fracture
Mhm.
than be stuck in a walking boot for a long time.
Yeah, I know, because it's our bodies. We only get one of them, so we don't need to
Yeah.
break our bones. If they're not already broken, we might as well like make sure they don't break. And if they are broken, we should probably let them heal. But
I
Yeah.
mean, like I've had a lot of bone breaks. It's not fun.
no.
It's not fun. And hey, maybe you can learn. I mean, taking 2 weeks off from running and like maybe, have to like change your activity. But then like once you get back into it too, it's like there's some other cool fun sports out there too. So
Mhm.
it's not
Yeah.
just running or nothing.
Yeah, not to say a tibia break's nice, but it's like you can cross train, right? It's like, and I
Mhm.
don't want you to go crazy cross training, but it's like you're not going to lose fitness, you're not losing time, you're not losing out on anything,
Mhm.
right? It's like this is a time to like listen to your body because it's giving you some pretty strong signals. Work with your medical team, work with your coach, work with your PT. These are people that you're going to for their advice. Like you're literally paying them for their advice. So I would
Mhm.
listen to them and like move ahead with that next step so that your medical team can advise you appropriately so that you can get back out there and crush your goals. You might have to adjust some of them in the near term, but you've got like this is something that's not a season ender by any means if you take care of yourself right now.
Mhm.
Woohoo.
Don't be in a boot in August, baby.
Yeah.
No
It's
boots
like
in August.
springtime. It's like,
Yeah.
get healthy for the summer.
Yeah, it's shoulder season anyway. Like it's
Yeah.
mud season. Like you can
You
miss
don't
like
want
the
that.
worst time of year for running. Someone's gonna tell us it's the best time of year. I'm so sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry that you're going through that. I hope that you get the imaging though. That's my non-medical opinion, but as a coach, that's my opinion. Okay, if you're still listening to us, share this with a friend, give us 5 stars, leave us a very nice review, tell us an inside joke, slide into our DMs, eat a snack if you're actively exercising right now, and until next time, we'll catch you out on the trails.